Okay, so this is a meeting to discuss the Dorset Local Plan Options Consultation. Your guides this evening are going to be Giles Watts, who is the chair of Dorset Climate Action Network and who's done a lot of work on the local plan over the years, and Councillor Belinda Bawden, who's the Lyme, Regis and Charmouth ward member for Dorset Council. So they're going to be your guides, and we're going to do it with them explaining a bit of the background, showing you the consultation, touching on some specific topics, and then probably around 8:15 we will look at the transport consultation briefly, because that's also interconnected and important. We're aiming to finish around 8:30. If you have any specific questions, it's still burning, Giles is going to stay on afterwards and he can give you a little bit of help kind of on a one-to-one basis. So before we start, I'm just going to talk you through how DorsetCAN operates. We ask you to be present and open at this meeting, that we respect the wisdom of the whole group. Please keep your questions and points concise. And because this is a big meeting, it would be really helpful if you put any questions in the chat, and then we'll try and manage it when we get the opportunity. Keep muted when you're not talking. If you need to raise a hand, please use the reactions button rather than raising your hand. And when we want to show our appreciation, we use our jazz hands because that makes everybody feel better, and it's a little bit isolating here as we are all on our computers. And a bit differently from normal, so Giles has got a little slide on this. We're going to ask you to help us cover the cost of our event this evening. So the price of a cup of Dorset coffee, not London coffee, would be super helpful to us. And I've put the link in the chat. Giles, you've got another slide there. Explains, you go onto our website and it will make it really easy for you to make a small donation. We'd really, really appreciate it. We're a charity. We're always strapped for cash, and we have some really hardworking people and also a lot of systems like Zoom that we have to pay for. So thank you very much for that. I think that's it from me. So I'm now going to hand over to Giles, who's going to start conducting you through this. Yeah, it is a bit complicated. So yeah, he's going to try and make it as easy as possible.
Great. Hi, everybody. Let me change my window here. Can you all see that? Vicky, can you see that local plan meeting?
I can see it. You've got it on the slideshow, yes, that's better.
Yep. Brilliant. Okay. I'd also just say I can't see anybody when I'm giving this. So if there are any hands go up or if there's anything else going on, Vicky, if you could, or if there's stuff in the chat, perhaps you could just stop me and let me know.
Yeah.
So before we start, I'll just give you an idea of what we're trying to do this evening. So I'm going to give a little bit of context. I've got 4 slides to show you context to the local plan. We're then going to have a little bit of an interactive session where we go onto the website to the actual consultation and show you how you can access the documents, the maps, and the online survey. Because I know it's a little bit complicated if you haven't done it before, so it's worth getting a little view as to how you can sort of navigate your way around there. During that, Belinda's going to talk about flexible settlement. That should be boundaries, not boundaries. And we may talk about a few of the other issues in there. And then we want to make sure there's enough time at the end because we're expecting there to be a lot of questions. So we're going to try and get through our presentations in about 25-30 minutes. So there's plenty of time for questions. So again, before we really get into the detail, I just, this is quite a complicated, I found it very complicated. And there are all sorts of nooks and crannies on the local plan. So I wanted to put up 3 statements first, just to position where we are. So DCAN, Dorset Climate Action Network, fully recognise that there is a housing crisis in Dorset, and we fully support efforts to tackle it, especially the delivery of truly affordable and social rental properties. And I think it's really important to say that we are not NIMBYs, we're not anti-development. We are really want to tackle the true housing crisis in Dorset. But housing does need to be of the right type. It needs to be built in the right specification and in the right location. And I don't think anyone would really disagree with that. So we support brownfield first over greenfield developments, but we recognise that some commercial housing in greenfield sites is both inevitable and can bring definite benefits to the community. So we're trying to be balanced here because, you know, we do need housing of all different forms. Housing is also deeply political, as I'm sure you know, and you know we will have people on this call from all political spectra. We at DorsetCAN are not political. We try very hard not to be political because it's not of any value. However, we do have to say that we believe that the current housing targets, which are described as housing needs, which have been imposed by the government, are both unreasonable and undeliverable and do not help to tackle the real housing crisis. And we'll say a little bit more about that later on. So what is the local plan? Here's a definition. There are various definitions around, but this one will do. It provides a framework and policies for future development of new homes, but also for jobs and infrastructure in order to meet growth requirements in a sustainable way. So that could be unpacked in a number of different ways, but that essentially is what the local plan is trying to do. And then a few little bits of history for our current local plan. Dorset became a unitary authority in 2019 and still adopts the local plans for the former district councils before that. In 2021, the then Dorset Council brought out a draft local plan, which was, can I say, deeply unpopular, soundly rejected by many groups, including DDB. Now, DDB stands for Dorset Deserves Better, which at the time was the sort of arm, it was the project led by DorsetCAN, which was trying to persuade Dorset Council to rethink the local plan in a more positive fashion. But the draft local plan that came out wasn't just rejected by us for a number of reasons. It was rejected by a number of national and local organisations, including Historic England and Natural England. In 2022, Dorset Deserves Better, or us, we organised an open letter to Spencer Flower, who is the leader of Dorset Council, with our what we felt were positive suggestions about how the local plan could be improved. And partly as a result of that, we won't take full credit, he admitted that the local plan they put out was incompatible with many of the climate and environmental policies, and indeed was driven by government targets. We then have a bit of space where work was going on in the background, but very little was presented publicly until last year, when the new government came in. We had a new council first, of course, and then a new government. And from the new government, we had a new NPPF, that's the National Planning Policy Framework, which is the framework for the local plan. We had a new standard method, which is the way in which housing need is calculated, which gives us the government targets, and a new process for the plan. So the whole thing went up, and there was legislation and all sorts of stuff at the time. And then here we are today, where the where our Dorset Council has adopted the new plan process and is undergoing what's called Regulation 18 Sites Consultation. And this is for a local plan that will last for 17 years, from 2026 to 2043. And under that scheme, they would expect the policies and an actual draft of the local plan to be available this time next year in August 2026. And then that will go to the inspector by the end of the year if we're going to make the deadline for the plan. So that's what the council is trying to do. They're trying to pursue our local plan, but some of the important bits, like the policies, aren't going to be available until next year. So another little bit of context. We've talked about the standard method, which is what's used to calculate housing need, and that translates into how many homes the council is required to build every year. And under the old method, this is the local plan in 2021, which itself was rejected as being unpopular. There were plans for 1,793 homes per year, plus a possible duty to cooperate. That's because BCP Council were very unlikely to be able to make their quota, and under the duty to cooperate, Dorset might have been forced to take on some of BCP Council's targets. And so we were scared at the time that another 800 houses would have been put on there, bringing it to around about 2,600. Under the new standard method that's been introduced, which I won't go into, it's risen a lot. It's doubled to 3,246 homes per year. And again, there is still a possible duty to cooperate if that becomes a requirement in the future. And that amounts to, over the 17-year period, if you multiply 3,246 by 17 years, comes to 55,000 new homes by 2043. So you're seeing approximately a 30% increase in the total housing in Dorset over the next 17 years. Now, the council in their plan explain how it is they are going to be able to meet that target. And they go through some of the smaller sites here. So the top one is the important one, which is existing permissions. And that is around about 10. In fact, I think it's more like 11,000 homes. So that's 11,000 homes that already have planning permission, but haven't yet been built. In addition, there's windfall sites, which are small sites in towns and villages, and a few other categories, which together come to about 25,000. So adding that up, that means that if you're going to satisfy the government targets, you still need to find about 30,000 more houses somewhere else in Dorset. And that is the basis for this sites consultation. And again, Dorset Council are required by government, if they disagree with this target, and we don't know yet whether they disagree with it or not, they need to demonstrate that they have examined all reasonable opportunities for meeting the housing targets and other needs. So they feel that that is what they are doing with this consultation process. And in that consultation, as we'll get onto in a moment, they've included every site, pretty much every site that's been recommended by landowners, developers, or themselves. There's been very little screening beforehand to say, you know, some are unsuitable or some shouldn't be built. They've just included everything that has been recommended to them. And that total, if you add up all the total in Appendix A, it comes to about another 45,000 houses. So I guess in there is a sort of feeling that perhaps out of the 45,000 houses, they might be able to find 30,000 that are acceptable. But we'll find out from the consultation process. And finally, I'd just like to say, I guess, you know, DCAN, like other organisations, has an emerging position on the local plan. And I think it's worth articulating some of what that is. So as regards the numbers, this is the headline number of 3,246 homes per year. We believe it is an unreasonable and undeliverable target. And that's not just us, that's actually a quote from Dorset Council themselves in their response to the NPPF consultation at the end of last year. So historically, we've only been able to build in Dorset around about 1,300 homes per year, or if you include splitting homes and other methods of creating new homes, about 1,600. So a hugely long way from the target of 3,246. In fact, if I show you very quickly this little curve, the blue line there shows historically how many houses have been built in Dorset. And the average of that over the last 5 years is the yellow line, which comes out as just over 1,500. The orange line above that was the old target and the old standard method. And the line right at the very top, the red one, is the new standard method. And that's really why we believe this target, and many other people believe this target, is undeliverable, because we haven't got the capacity in the the builders, the developers, the raw materials, etc., the people that you need to actually build at such a high rate. So back to DCAN's position on housing numbers, we don't believe that the current plan specifically addresses the real housing crisis, which is which is mainly around truly affordable and social housing. We have a housing register with over 7,000 people, which is growing by around 120 per week. And there aren't the targets in there in order to be able to address that. It's just assumed that they will fall out of commercial developments. Another aspect which is slightly technical is that in November this year, we're going to lose what's called our 5-year housing supply. So the government requires you to build at a rate which will enable you to meet the housing target. And because of the increased targets, even though the local plan hasn't come to force, we will lose our housing supply target, which we currently meet. And that's important because it means that speculative planning permission will be very difficult to stop. So planning permission that comes in, and all our spies tell us that indeed the developers are out there rubbing their hands together, waiting for the 5-year housing supply to fall apart so that they can put out speculative development, which will be difficult for Dorset Council to refuse. And we're concerned that Dorset Council's approach to the local plan may mean that there's an erosion of the green belt, to allow more housing in the green belt through the classification of grey belt. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We're worried about the watering down of settlement boundaries, the new flexible boundary system, and Belinda's going to talk about that. And we are, concerned that we may end up having to propose developments which are in, frankly, unsustainable locations. And that's why we're holding the meeting this evening, because it's really, really important that we do respond to this sites consultation, and we do it in our local areas, because the only way that we'll find out and be able to communicate which are the good sites and which are the unsustainable sites is by making sure that local knowledge is known. And local knowledge is by far the best way to make sure that unreasonable and unsustainable developments are prevented. That's me for the first part.
Charles, can I just interject just for a second? Because there's
Sure.
a question from Douglas Rice, no, from Anita of the Verwoodians, about the numbers of unsold homes, which I think is pertinent to the overall analysis of the numbers. So, Anita, do you want to ask your question?
You'll have to unmute yourself first.
I was just wondering, how can we argue against the need for all this extra housing if we don't know how many houses remain unsold from all the development that's been going on? I mean, Wimborne has been vastly developed. The traffic there is awful. Verwood itself has had an awful lot of development where I live. And I'm just thinking, well, how many homes are for sale still on these sites to justify?
I can't answer the question about unsold houses. I mean, as I said, we did answer the question about how many have planning permission but actually haven't been built yet.
Giles, Belinda's got her hand up. She could possibly answer it.
Belinda.
I can't answer it. It's a really good point, though. So this is one of the reasons why we're really anxious to make sure that everybody contributes locally, because if you know you've got a number of unsold houses and you let Dorset Council know that, and the sort of houses, whether it's the big 3 to 4 executive type style homes with 2 garages, if it's those type that are being unsold, it's really important that they have all that feedback. I know in Lyme, so we're doing a housing needs analysis survey as well, which we hand delivered leaflets throughout the town, and as part of that we were logging the number of empty homes and unsold properties, so we're going to be feeding that in, but yes, if you know that, it's really important, and if it doesn't fit on the consultation, you know, if those concerns don't fit into the actual consultation survey question and answer format, just email the planning team and let them know, because even in really popular areas, there are a lot of unsold homes. Some have never been occupied. It's weird, and they need to know that, because they haven't got the local knowledge that we have.
Okay, thanks, Belinda. I've got another question. I'm trying to put the questions where they're relevant. So apologies if you asked a question, I haven't said it yet. But Chris Latham from Burwood, do you want to ask your question about second homes? Because that's about numbers, really.
Yes, I just thought I'd make the point that from April next year, second homes will attract double council tax, which is intended to make people give them up, and then they go on the market and get sold. And I just wondered if that part of the concept has been included in any numbers calculations, or whether it's just something that would be additional. And I don't know how many sort of people have holiday homes in Dorset, but I know in Cornwall they have large numbers, and maybe they do on the coast in Dorset.
Belinda, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can kind of answer that. We've got lots of second homes council tax is in place now, and it was a mechanism that government enabled local authorities to raise a bit more money. It wasn't really aimed at solving the housing crisis at all, because it doesn't. But yes, the numbers are very high. There are lots of other things going on, like the lots of increased standards that are coming in. Dorset Council does actually have a special landlords team, so they are trying to encourage. They're not only offering landlords grants where it's applicable for them to reach, to upgrade their properties, and they're also trying to persuade more of them to think about offering their properties for rental for people who are coming out of short-term accommodation, for example. And there are quite substantial incentives to do that. I'll put I'm not sure. I was going to say I'll put the links in the chat, but I'm not sure I'll be able to. But the other, on the flip side, so what they're hoping is that if a lot of landlords are going to give up short-term holiday letting, I don't know that many second homeowners are going to be selling as a consequence of the council tax. I think that's a bit of a red herring, but certainly in terms of converting short-term holiday letting, the government's done away with the tax incentives for that, so that Dorset Council's hoping that more of the short-term holiday letting landlords will go over to long-term rentals, because that's, it's another area of shortage. However, also on the horizon, we have the Renters' Rights Bill, I think it's called, coming in. So that actually might have the opposite effect. So no, all of those impacts, I don't think have been kind of calculated. But again, I can just keep stressing, if you know that second homes and short-term holiday letting is a big issue in your area, it certainly is. I was a census team leader in East Devon, and it's just phenomenal. Up to 40% were holiday lets or second homes, and I think that's, that's not that was East Devon, but it's not dissimilar in Dorset. So again, if you know that you've got that kind of pressure and that kind of information locally, please do feed it in to the information, if necessary by email.
Thanks, Belinda. Let's go to Giles again, and you can take us to the nitty-gritty of the consultation.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Can you see a picture of my internet there? Here we are. Vicky, can you just confirm you can see that?
I can. Excellent.
Okay. I've also put in the chat, I've re-put in the chat the link. So if you just go into Google or whatever your client is and just type in Dorset Council Local Plan Consultation, this is what will come up first. If you click on that, you will get to this page. So, ladies and gents, this is the interactive part. So we hope this will go smoothly, but we're not quite sure. So I hope you will bear with us if the internet proves slow. So what I wanted to do was just give you a little guide to some of the things that are in here, so you can navigate your own way around more easily. So this is what you press if you want to go to the actual online consultation. We won't do that for the moment, but they have a little bit further down a lot of really useful information which is worth seeing. So here, for instance, are interactive maps. So if I click on that, that comes up, that goes into a thing called Dorset Explorer, which has got a whole series of it's a very rich resource with a lot of really useful information in it. But it goes to a particular part of that which actually shows all the sites in the sites consultation. If I home in on that, you can see here the Dorchester, and which is 3,750 homes, plus all the extra 1,000 around Charminster, etc., and the huge one around 4,000 homes in Crossways. So one of those sites which are index A, and so that's a very
Giles, I think we're losing you off and on.
the time are well worth dipping into. You don't have to read them all, but they'll give you a lot of good information.
Giles, you're a bit coming and going.
I'm not sure what I can do.
Giles, you're coming and going. Do you want to turn your video off, because I think it might be at your end?
Internet. Can you hear me?
No.
Only intermittently.
Giles, we've got a problem with that. You need to either get rid of your video or
hear me now.
No, you're coming and going.
I think you've frozen a bit.
We don't mind him freezing. We just need to be able to hear him.
There we are. I've switched my video off. Is that any better?
Yeah,
can you hear me now?
Yep. Soldier on.
Oh dear, oh dear. I'm not sure what to do. So
You want to email me the presentation, and I'll show it on from my video.
He's going through the Dorset local plan.
Vicky, can I suggest that Belinda gives her talk about the settlement boundaries, and I will reboot my machine.
Okay, yes. Right. So one of the issues that comes up in the plan is this question of flexible settlement boundaries. And it's a new concept. I didn't understand it.
I can't hear you at all now.
Okay. I didn't understand it when I read it. So Belinda's going to go through that bit of the plan and explain it to you, because it's really important and it probably affects everybody here.
Great. And I will reboot my machine.
Belinda, you're muted.
Unmute. Okay. And then I need to do slideshow, don't I? Oops. I can't get rid of the thing at the top. Slideshow.
That lovely photo is going to be covered in housing.
No, it isn't. It's just a random photo. Anyway, I think that for me, there's been, can people hear and see all right? I'm sorry, I can't put it on the slideshow.
We can certainly hear you and we can just about see it. So carry on.
Okay. I think that there's been some misunderstanding about the intentions of the flexible settlements policy. Flexible settlements policy. So at the moment, we're not getting, Dorset Council is not getting proposals coming through for small scale developments of either mixed or affordable housing immediately outside settlements. They're just not coming through. So this is a proposal to try to encourage more of them by enabling, it's only going to be in the areas that are in the tiers of the tier 1, tier 2 or tier 3 settlements, where there is existing infrastructure that will support small scale developments of up to 30 homes. This policy will enable that. Whereas at the moment you have to apply to be a rural exception site, and the developments have to be 100% affordable. And as I say, they're just not coming through. So that's why this proposal is to try to enable. It's hoping that smaller local builders and developers will be able to propose small scale settlements, as I say, up to 30 homes. They have to be adjacent to existing tier 1, 2 or 3 settlements. They will only be considered one at a time. So where people have been expressing fears about sort of rampant development outside our settlements, that's not going to happen. There will only be one proposal considered at any one time. And the idea is that they're going to be linked as strongly as possible to the local character, referring to the existing neighbourhood plans and to local design codes. And aiming to deliver diverse, high quality homes while preserving rural character and environmental sustainability, aiming to give smaller local builders and developers the opportunity to propose small scale developments appropriate for local needs. So I think this really just says that, the same kind of criteria will apply. Small scale, situated adjacent to existing settlements, where housing need has been demonstrated. Avoid protected landscapes, heritage, valued landscapes, aligning with neighbourhood plans, reflecting community priorities, and will only be considered where the existing infrastructure, so the schools, the medical facilities and transport is already there. So the implications are, it's providing controlled flexibility for, if you like, organic expansion of settlements, supporting affordable housing and self-build projects. But it's because it's enabling some mixed development. So it doesn't have to be 100% affordable. It could be, but it doesn't have to be, as it does at the moment under current policy. And so they're really hoping that these smaller scale projects will begin to come forward, because enabling some market housing will make it viable. And I've just added here, if you know of any potential sites, or you know of landowners, a lot of landowners are very community minded. If you have local community land trusts in need of volunteer support, because that's certainly the case where we are, or if you know some small builders or property developers who might be interested in this kind of development, please do talk to them and encourage them to participate in the consultation. So that's it on flexible settlement boundaries. It's not as I think that I have heard people saying, oh, that means there's going to be rampant development outside all our towns. It doesn't. It's actually aiming to have very controlled, very small scale, very sustainable and very locally supported expansion. So I hope that makes sense. I will stop sharing now and see if anyone has any questions.
Everybody happy about flexible settlements, or any questions? Can't see any questions. I don't have any questions in the.
Can I say, sorry, I haven't put it in the chat, but taking your word on your screen, thank you, Belinda. Interesting to see, but forgive me being cynical and thinking it's the thin end of the wedge. And it has been the case in the past that anything beyond the development boundary was an exception site with the conditions attached.
Yeah.
We are going to have great difficulty controlling the blooming developers, as we ever do, to ensure that we get the building that we need, taking into account the housing register, taking into account local need for housing, as we do know. And I think it's going to be very difficult to ensure that developers listen to us rather than insisting the other way around. The tail's been wagging the dog for far too long.
Yeah, I agree. And it's we're going into that, you know, as Giles has explained, we're going into that stage where it is much, much more difficult for the local authorities to prevent that. But then, you know, that's why they're trying to come up with a policy that does actually give them more control. And, you know, that's certainly the intention. But yeah, I agree with you.
Certainly need to
and you know,
muzzle those developers.
Yeah, just bearing in mind, we do have a new we do have a new administration. There's a huge amount of work going on in the housing side and the planning side. They are working together much, much more effectively than they did in the past. They certainly work together with the local transport plan and the climate and ecological plan much more, you know, as Giles said previously, they were developed in completely different silos and they didn't refer to each other. They do this time. But I take your point. We are all at the mercy of the developers and of government policy, which is imposing 80% more housing than we struggled to reach last time round.
Thank you, Belinda. We have got an awful lot of questions in the chat which we're not dealing with, but I think we need to go back to Giles and for John for the minute, and then I'll try and pick them up where relevant. So I might have to interject at a certain point. Right. So do carry on, Giles.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give it a second go, and if it doesn't work, hopefully Sam Wilberforce is going to step in and take over for me. So here goes. Vicky, can you just confirm you can see the Dorset Local Plan Options Consultation?
Yep.
And you can hear me okay?
Yep.
So far, so good. Excellent. Right, we got as far as we did the interactive maps, which may have destroyed the whole thing. So anyway, you know where to go if you want to see a map of the outlines. The other thing it brings us is a lot of documents which are well worth dipping into. You don't have to read the whole lot, but particularly for your local area. So I'm going to, in a moment, just show you a little bit about the main document here, which is about 100 pages long. And then these 4 appendices. The first one is the key one because that contains all of the sites and a summary of information about all the sites. So if you're going to make any comments on a particular site, it is well worth looking at the information that's in there. The other sections, there's opportunity sites for employment. We discussed there's opportunity sites for travellers, gypsies and travelling show people. And then the other one, which is relevant to us in DorsetCAN, is the opportunity areas for renewable energy. So they've looked at where at first pass areas that might be suitable for both onshore wind and PV solar farms of different sizes. They've contracted a company to go and look at those and give a first pass assessment as to what sites which might be suitable for those. And I think what's really important is that, you know, we do, as DorsetCAN, want to build up our renewable energy sources. And I think it's encouraging that the council have actually put together this information, and it will give us at least a steer as to where there may be more sustainable locations that we can have renewable energy sources. And that's particularly important for instance, community energy projects, which might bring specific benefits for decarbonising particular towns and villages. So there's also a bunch of other supporting documents, which I won't go into. Some of these are quite important, including sustainability assessments, habitat regulations, etc. But please do look at those as well if they're relevant. So we're going to go into this first one, which is the main document. And just have a look at the contents page. So we're not going to go into these in much detail, but I think it's important to see the sorts of things it talks about in here. So vision and strategic priorities, that's the, the overall view of where Dorset wants to get to in the next 17 years. The strategy for sustainable development, again, it's sort of the visionary process, what sustainable development means and what it could look like. Housing delivery strategy is starting to get into the numbers and how they're going to be able to tackle those numbers. That's where some of the key tables are located. And then we get into the flexible settlements policy, which I won't talk about at all anymore because Belinda's done an excellent job of going through that. There's something about employment strategy. There's something about town centre development, which is linked to the next one, which is brownfield land, because most brownfield land is in existing settlements. What they say there is that there are only about 5,000 plots for about 5,000 houses in brownfield sites. And we think that that's too low. What they haven't considered properly, I think, is many sites such as car parks in the centre of town, which could be converted into development sites, and increase of densification, which actually helps public transport systems, again, in the centre of towns. So we think that they have actually underestimated the number of brownfield potential sites which are there. And of course, the more brownfield sites that you can tease out, the less greenfield sites need to be developed. The Greenbelt Strategy Review is important because you've, I'm sure, heard about the government change to classify grey belt. And we have quite a lot of green belts, particularly in southeast Dorset, which are on the edge of the BCP conurbation, and that is very much under threat. The definition of grey belt is quite loose, and it seems to be quite easy to end up classifying an awful lot of land as grey belt, and therefore open potentially to development. So that's an area which particularly I think is important that people respond to if you are in an area with green belt. Self-built custom housing, won't go to that. Neighbourhood plans, they talk about how the neighbourhood plans are potentially changed by the settlement, flexible settlement boundaries, travellers and show people, etc. Heathland recreation mitigation, won't go into that for the moment, but of course that's very important for environmental targets. I mean, we have some of our most sensitive areas in Heathland, which are also very close to the greenfield sites, and developments there do tends to end up restricting the heathland and breaking up ecological sites. So again, there are areas where that's extremely important. The next one is a short summary to go with the Appendix D, which we mentioned about potential sites for wind, solar and battery storage. So we as DorsetCAN, we've gone into that in some detail. And if you wish to respond to that, however you wish, but we would be delighted if it's mainly positive, except for the very large developments, then feel welcome to do that. There is a master plan for the North Dorchester development, which is close to where I live. Again, won't go into it, but that's a particular piece of work that the council have done in collaboration with a company called Hyas. And there is a master plan for Weymouth, which is a really important centre for future employment and development as we get into the clean energy supercluster. So that's Belinda. I can't see you, but is there anything else you want to say about any of those topics? Because we've gone through those very quickly.
I've got a couple of questions, Giles, which might help direct attention, if that's okay.
Please do.
And they are both flagging up important issues in here, if you want to unshare it just for a minute.
Sure.
So Douglas Rice and Hugo Mayville have asked about the relationship between the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. I don't know, Douglas, do you want to ask your question? You tabled it right at the beginning.
Just remember to unmute first.
We can't see you, Douglas, so if you've gone, we don't know. Can anybody see Douglas? Otherwise, let's invite you. Oh, you can?
Well, at least I can see his screen.
Okay, Hugo, if you're there, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, my question is really about the neighbourhood plan. We had a fantastically well-developed neighbourhood plan in Blandford. We've got one. It's really works really well. And it's been even hailed by the Dorset Council as a good example of how to do such a thing. And it seems that from the government's new legislation, they're intending an end to the neighbourhood plan as such and its role in planning, which seems a great shame, because I think what's going to happen as a result of that is that we will have even less control over what is built where, and we'll be at risk of even more opportunistic builders possibly building where they want to rather than where we want them to. In fact, we used our neighbourhood plan partially to prevent such a thing from happening last year in Blandford, because it had been accepted by Dorset Council as an extant document, and we were able to fight off a development which we didn't want. So I think that, yeah, there's a real danger there. That's my point, and something that we need to bear in mind when we're considering all these points.
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
Please do.
They're not abolishing neighbourhood plans. They have stopped the funding that was available for town and parish councils to develop neighbourhood plans.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think we are all slightly, we're still waiting to hit the planning and infrastructure bill. We still don't know. There are still things that we are kind of having to deal with uncertainty from what government is going to do, but certainly as far as Dorset Council is concerned, they are still very much respecting local plans and will continue to do so.
Well, so can I just start out, when Nick Harden came to visit our council recently, he kind of agreed that the neighbourhood plans were on their way out. So
sorry, who said that?
Sorry,
who said that? Sorry,
Nick Ireland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons I say that.
Yeah.
I mean, if it is the case, that's a great shame, is my point.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
it gives local neighbourhoods a great deal of more control over what's built in their area.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I don't think Nick's correct in saying that they're going out, but
Okay.
there is an element of uncertainty, and obviously with all this stuff with combined mayoral authorities and who's going to be responsible for what. But I think we need to stick with our neighbourhood plans where we can.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Chris,
thank you.
Is your question, Chris, about neighbourhood plans?
It's just a brief point, if I may, in answer to Giles. This is a demonstration of the website, which I would say is good, but I have found myself, when getting into it and having to be interrupted, that where you've got the save for later option, which is at the bottom of the screen usually, may I caution that you have cookies allowed on the site, because as I found when I've tried to go back into it, all the stuff that I had put in there isn't there. Now, it's just as well that I had made a point of loading the answers that I had already written in onto a separate, in my case, pages sheet. It could be Word, whatever you use. So you've got it on a separate panel, independent of the website, and then you can recopy them in if you need to. So just be cautious of that. Get the cookies allowed, otherwise you'll lose them.
Thank you,
Chris.
I didn't know that.
Well done, top tip. I spent 2 hours doing it this afternoon. I do hope I had cookies enabled, because I haven't put it anywhere else. So thank you for that. Can I do another question? This is about back to slightly flexible settlements and the green belt and urban sprawl from Norman Foster. I just want to unpack that a bit and see if we've got that straight. So Norman.
Sorry, which of my questions were you talking about? Because I've got 2 or 3 there.
One about the green belt and urban sprawl and the relationship with flexible
settlements. I mean, we talked about the flexible settlements, the ones that are only about 30 houses. Well, certainly the ones around Lytcham and Travers are much greater than that. And they actually are all built or proposed to be built on greenfield land. And once you destroy that greenfield land, you basically have urban sprawl, which, according to the NPPF, the Greenbelt is there to prevent urban sprawl. But what we will potentially see is the merging of Lytcham and Travers, Lytcham, Minster and Upton. And there's nothing you can say except that that's urban sprawl.
Belinda?
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to type in an answer quickly. The flexible settlements policy is different. It's not referring to the sites that are shown as potential for development.
How many of the sites that have been submitted are flexible settlement sites? There must be very, very few.
No, they're not. They're not. That's a different policy. It's not referring to the sites that they're showing. They're literally having to show every piece of possible land for housing with a notional number of the number of houses that could go on it. It is not saying there are proposals to develop this number of houses here. It's not the same thing. It's just at this point of the consultation, they're trying to get local feedback on why the sites that they are showing may or may not be suitable for housing in that community. And so they're very reliant on us locally going back and saying, well, this was rejected for, let's say, land instability and drainage problems, which is one of the things in Lyme Regis, for example. They need to have all of that information to go back on to see where to see what's left from this exercise for them to be able to go forward with sites that do have potential. And that would form the actual local plan, which would then come for consultation this time next year.
Thanks, Belinda. I just wanted to get that sort of sorted out. Giles, are you going to the sites next?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Joe, do you have a quick question about something we've just said?
It's not about something we've just said. It's that this is all splendid, but it's not taking account of the enormity of the housing shortage for younger people. It's not taking account of sea level rise. It's not taking account of that these settlements assume that every household has at least one car, and that is incompatible with the carbon dioxide emissions. So it's just like to raise the fact that this is not nearly as rigorous, as far-reaching as I think we should be thinking about. That's all.
Can I just respond to that quickly? I mean, I think we would agree with you that in terms of sustainability, the sheer numbers that are proposed in Dorset are not compatible with the environmental and climate targets that we have. There are lots of good words in there about trying to reduce the emissions and make them as sustainable as possible. But I personally feel that it's missing this, concept of the looking at it together and trying to make sure that it is compatible with other policies. It doesn't appear to be to me.
And in the consultation response, there are lots of boxes for comments, and they're really big boxes. You can write quite a lot. And I suggest you express these views in those boxes. That's kind of what they're there for. Councillor Kimber, is this a quick question? Otherwise, we're going to move on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the meeting tonight. Can you hear me?
Not
yes,
really.
Paul.
Start again. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. I don't know why I always have trouble getting now. One of the things I want you to do, I realise that we live in one of the most beautiful counties in the land, and it's right and proper that we should protect it. One of my biggest issues is people and the need for around social housing. I realise probably I'm in a minority tonight, but there is a need for young people and youngsters, not only young people now, but even middle-aged people now, have not got on their, if you like, they get on the first step of their run of the of a house. And again, this as I represent probably one of the poorest areas in Dorset, and it's recognised in the House of Commons Library. We have to do, if anything, tonight is balance our views of keeping our beautiful county, and also with one eye on the effects of young people if we want to keep young people in the county. Thank you
very much. I think it's really, really important point. I hope we're all behind that. Giles, do you want to carry on with your sites?
Yes, I will share my screen again. So we left this at this is the contents page for the main document. And the only other thing I was really going to just say is that as you go down this, there are various questions that are asked. I'll come down to one in a moment. And when we do, because these are here we are in the vision section. Question 2, I must have missed question 1, but these questions are asked throughout this document, and there are 45 questions in total. And these are the same questions which are asked in the online survey. So as you go through this document, it's providing you with all of the background information for those questions.
Nationwide.
Right. So I'm going to come out of that, and I'm going to quickly go into the opportunity sites for housing, the Appendix A. So if I click on that one instead. So this is a much larger document, and this is the one with the meat. This contains all of the sites that have been proposed. And in the contents here are all of the settlements, the towns and villages which have proposed settlements around them. So if I just, for an example, I'll go into Dorchester here. So at the start of each section, there'll be a map which shows all of the, it shows the settlement boundary, which is in black, and it shows all of the developments which are detailed further in the document. So if we go down, you know, this is one of those developments south of Castle Park. It gives you a name, it gives you a rough idea of the total capacity for new homes in that site. And then it goes through showing a number of sounds. Somebody I can hear, if you could mute yourself, please.
Oh, could you mute?
These areas here are quite important. If you're going to make a comment about any of these developments, as we hope you will, then these provide some important information on the natural environment and ecology, landscape and visual, heritage, flood risk, amenity, health, education, etc. So it's quite good if you're going to respond back to have a little read through these and then add in your own comments. And these comments are repeated in the online presentation. So if I just give you one more example, oops, so back onto the sites. So if we look at one other example, let's going to do Broadmain in our area. So this is two small villages just outside of Dorchester on the way to Wall. And you can see the settlement boundaries here in black for Broadmain and West Knighton. And in this case, over 1,000 or space for up to 1,000 houses in a number of developments. Now, we're not expecting all of those to get developed, but you know, if you're living in this area, then you may want to wish to make some comments on those housing possibilities. Right. So I think the only other thing then was, if you go to the top of this, so we're back at the place where we first started. If you want to do the actual consultation itself, you click on the Start Now. And now I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm going to just, at the front here, it allows you to consult not only on the local plan, but also on the local transport plan. So the consultation process for those both are going along in parallel, and both of them need to be responded to by the 13th of October. And I know that the council is worried that because they're being run alongside each other, many fewer people are responding to the transport plan than are responding to the local plan. Both, of course, go hand in hand. You can't deliver housing and infrastructure without actually looking at the transport issues at the same time. So it's, if you have any interest at all in your areas on the transport aspect, then please do look at the transport plan and make some comments. But we would go for the local plan, we'd click on the first one, and then I'm not going to go all the way through this, but we go local plan consultation, start now. And then it'll be a bit delayed, but you then have to fill in some personal information. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip to one I've prepared earlier, if this works. Oh, fantastic. So if you go down a couple more screens after you filled out your personal information, you come to here. And this is the proper start of the local plan sites consultation. So it gives you a bit of information up front, and then it provides you with this map. And the way you access it is you focus in on the particular development you want to make a comment about. Let's say you want to consider this one here in Crossways.
Before we get into the technical things, I would like to let you know that this.
So you click on that, and then just beneath that you go continue, and if you wait a moment, that should then bring you into the section which would allow you to put in comments specifically about that development. Now it may or may not play ball with me here. Oh, it has worked. Excellent. So it's a bit slow tonight, but this then gives you the same information you saw in Appendix A about that development with the different categories. And then underneath it, it says, what do you think are the main considerations for this option? You may pick a few here, landscape and amenity, perhaps, transport. And then most importantly, there is a box here, a free-form box of up to 3,000 characters, about 500 words, which allows you to say what you want. And this is the main means that you can actually make comments on that site. And my advice to you actually would be to probably pre-write what it is you want to put down in your comments, and then just cut and paste them into that box. And then that's just giving you a chance to either go to another housing option, review another section, or finish. So I'm not going to do any more, Vicky. I think that's probably enough, but I just wanted you to show how you get into it, how you make comments, so that when you do it yourselves, it's not a shock the first time you do it, because it is a little bit complicated.
Well, thanks very much, Giles. That's really helpful, just the practical information. I've just whipped through all the questions. Belinda has answered quite a lot of them on the hoof there. There was just one I think is quite interesting from Debbie Manston. Talk about new towns. Why is there not a new town option? We're just adding to all the existing settlements. Debbie, do you want to ask that question?
Hi, thank you very much indeed. It was just just some thoughts we've had that all of this is pepper potting across the countryside, and rather than doing all of this in different areas with smaller developers, as you've suggested, and areas, is perhaps let's just look at doing a new, I don't know, I've used the word town probably loosely, but having something completely new in an area where you could plan it totally with infrastructure, schools and healthcare, rather than putting the pressure on all the local areas and the local villages and the local places that are struggling. And it was just a thought thrown into the ring.
Debbie, it's a very good thought. If you don't mind, I'll answer it, and I'm sure Belinda will want to come in too. So the council is considering new towns, but one of the issues about, well, a couple of issues about new towns. One is that it's going to be in the medium long term, so it's going to take a long while to actually get all the permissions and boundaries and master planning, etc. for that. So it won't impact the front end of the local plan, but they might impact the far end of the local plan. Now, when it comes to new towns, the government is also very keen on new towns, and they set up a new towns task force last year, which was to look for around 100 new towns. Actually, last week, literally about 6 days ago, they have announced the first 12 of those new towns. None of them are in Dorset. There is one in Devon. I think there's one in Cornwall. But the characteristic about these is that they're firstly over 10,000 houses, and secondly that they already have very good transport links and fit into the, so that they don't need a huge amount of extra money to be spent on connecting them to existing infrastructure. And I think that's where Dorset is really lacking. At the moment, we don't have any sites that are in the range of 10,000 homes, and we lack the sort of infrastructure. So any new towns would almost certainly need to have new road or rail connections to them. So I don't believe that any of the Dorset proposals, if there are any, would actually make the shortlist for the government support. Belinda, over to you.
Yeah, I did answer I was answering your question.
Yeah, I saw, thank you.
And I wasn't sure that you literally meant new towns, or
well,
the fact that, so basically what I'm trying to say is the sites that are sort of proposed as having potential, the bigger ones definitely would not go ahead unless the developer brought, planned and brought the infrastructure to it as well. So there are places, for example, where the communities are really keen to have some more housing near them, because they haven't, at the moment, they've just got housing with no infrastructure, so that the sites that are being proposed, they are looking forward to it, because it will bring schools and better roads, a railway station, or maybe not a railway station. I'm getting a bit carried away here, but but that there are some areas where the development will be bringing in more infrastructure, which they don't currently have. So they're seeing it as a benefit. So that's why the plan, the sites have been focusing on areas sort of around existing places. And yeah, as I say, the bigger ones the developers will have to, they'll be conditioned, or no, even before they get to that, they will have to propose the infrastructure necessary, including water management and separation of sewage, etc., etc.
Thanks, Belinda. Chris, is your point about this same topic or something else?
I was going to add to some of that as well. One of the concerns that we have in Bedminster, and I will apply elsewhere as well, is this obsession with extra housing to the exclusion of any employment sites does not help any community.
No.
Yeah, I agree.
What I'm concerned about is, of course, that we end up being a bloody dormitory town for the conurbation of Dorchester and Weymouth. No disrespect to those two, but they're busy. They are full up with employment. And if you add further with the grand ideas that they've got for the green proposals for the Dorchester-Weymouth area, it's going to attract an awful lot of commuters, obviously. Surely the idea is to provide employment opportunities in the towns around there, so that you have work where there are houses, and ideally provide employment opportunities within the towns and smaller villages, larger villages, that in some way takes account of the green climate emergency proposals that were accepted by many towns and county as well. We need to be able to avoid commuting for miles and miles every day. I mean, think from Bedminster to Dorchester, I mean, that's 18 miles each way every day. It would be horrendous. And there's no public transport to take account of it, and there's no extra employment land, because they've taken it away in Bedminster, which would allow those who are living there to find a job there.
Well, thank you very much. Just can I say, there is room on the consultation to say all of that, and I've certainly been saying it myself today. just very quickly from Belinda and Giles, then can you go on to the transport consultation and maybe flag up the other consultations that are going on?
Yeah, I was just going to, I couldn't agree more with you, Chris. And I think those of us in West Dorset and, you know, the rural northern areas as well may feel pretty strongly that I keep saying it in Dorset Council, please don't forget about West Dorset, both in transport terms and in employment terms. I don't think they pay us enough attention. That, you know, in the previous administration, all the attention was over in the east. This administration, there's a lot more focus on Dorchester and Weymouth, which is great. But the number of times I sit in meetings and they actually put the title of the map across the west of the county. So I just, you know, those, and whenever I start banging on about, you know, we're feeling left out. The members from the you know, the sort of northern areas also say the same thing, and yeah, I think we really do have to bang the drum for our own employment opportunities. And you know, somewhere like Lyme Regis gets sort of 30,000 visitors a day coming from a really wide area of, you know, that maybe driving for 2 to 2.5 hours to come and visit for the day, and that sort of impact is really not being recognised, I think, in the way that Dorset Council's looking at employment. So yes, bang it all in there. They need to hear it, not just from me.
Need to sustain the local residents that are there during the winter months.
Yeah,
when it goes quiet, when you haven't got tourists, you need to be able to supply the local economy with local business.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I just say something quickly about on the transport side, because one of the ugliest aspects, I think, of this local plan is it assumes that if a new development is on the edge of an existing town or village, it's naturally more sustainable because people will only have a short distance to travel to find their services. And I just think that's a very poor system. And if you know, really you want these new developments to have their own infrastructure so that people don't have to travel by car, even if it's, you know, 5 miles to the nearest town. Dorchester itself has, you know, relatively good rail links. Dorchester and Weymouth are both connected to the line to London. However, you know, and there is investment which is earmarked for the Heart of Wessex line, which is, you know, but there isn't, you know, which really ought to happen and would really help to improve the north-south connectivity. Similarly, there is a proposal for a new metro rail service which operates between, I think it's Southampton, BCP, and as far as Wareham, but it doesn't get as far as Dorchester and Weymouth. And one of the reasons for that is there's only single track between Moreton and Dorchester. And that's a real oversight to me, because there's nothing actually wrong with commuting. I mean, all major cities have huge amount of commuting, but you need good public transport routes in. So, you know, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to commute along those rail lines in a pretty sustainable way, as long as you've got the infrastructure investment that's been given.
Giles, thank you. We're just going to go over to Belinda quickly for the couple of slides on the transport consultation. Councillor Wilson, I'm sorry, we're just going to have to press on for the minute because we're going to run out of time otherwise. If you want to put your question or point in the chat, we'll try and get to it before the end. We've literally got 15 minutes now. Belinda, are you ready to go with your slides?
Nearly, hang on. Sorry, not quite, actually.
Oh, shall I go quickly, Councillor Wilson? He's gone. He gave up. Waiting.
No, I'm here. I just took my hand. Hi. So Ben Wilson, I'm the Dorset Councillor for South East Purbeck. I just wanted to come in on something Belinda just said, which I think is important here, as well as the transport strategy and the local plan. We also had something called the economic growth strategy, which was signed off by Council in July. Within that process of signing it off, they declared that both coastal towns and market towns, which is a lot of North Dorset and a lot of the coast in Dorset, would have specific policies within the Dorset local plan to explain how we were going to drive better employment opportunities into those places. So it's really, for me, the third part of the triangle that hasn't, you know, in this dialogue, in this conversation, hasn't been included. I think it's really critical in our feedback that we make very clear that we need those policies. We need to drive those employment opportunities into both market towns and coastal towns, so that they can, you know, tie in with what's being projected from a housing perspective.
Okay, quick flash at the local transport plan consultation.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry, it's all in one document, so I'll probably whiz through. I'm not going to show everything, but it's in joint with BCP, local transport plan. And as Vicky or Giles said earlier on, I think the feedback I'm getting from Dorset Council is that they're a little bit anxious because people aren't responding to it. So please do. This is not going to come back in a year's time. So what we put in now will form the local transport plan. So that's why we need to encourage everyone to do it. So again, it's a 15-year strategic plan. Yeah. So the big thing that I want to get across, because I know that my town council here does not understand this yet, is that the approach from government changed this year. So transport planning used to be done on what they call predict and provide, which was that they'd predict the volumes of traffic and then they'd provide the infrastructure to enable that growth. They flipped that completely on its head now. So they want that the transport planning is now vision-led, ideally from local communities, showing what it is that they would like their village and town to look like, how they want to get around those towns, and the priority being pedestrians first. So with the new the new travel hierarchy has, you know, walkers first and then wheelers and cyclists next, and the private car being at the bottom of that hierarchy. So this completely different approach to transport planning, I don't think enough people have sort of understood that it is very different this time. And yeah, these other things, so they've been aligning it with spatial planning, and again the importance of what local people would like their village and town to feel like, and how they want to get around and how they want to use the space. So it's about quality of the public realm. Obviously there's decarbonising transport. Dorset Council has 44%, I think it is, of our carbon emissions as a county comes across, it comes from agriculture, which is more difficult. So a lot of the pressure to reduce our carbon emissions is on surface transport, which is very difficult in areas where you really can't rely on the public transport system. But a lot of the journeys are very short. So one of the big factors in the transport planning is, how do we offer people other ways to get around to reduce the very high number of very short journeys, and also, yeah, just the business and commuting. How can they, work with employers to look at different ways to bring people to work? So these are the key messages from the engagement. More frequent, affordable, accessible public transport. Walking, wheeling and cycling is inadequate, which limits the shift to sustainable travel. Older people, disabled people and non-drivers are facing significant barriers, and I would argue that's particularly in the sort of rural northern areas and the West Dorset. There's not enough connectivity between towns. There's also not enough connectivity between buses and trains. They are working on that. Wait, I can't see the actual rest of the slide. Yeah, so there's a lot of focus on road safety and aiming to reduce congestion. So the vision is using innovation, digital connectivity, a lot more creativity with working with community bus services linking into the, the commercial services, and protecting our environment. So those are the 6 key objectives, which probably
5 minutes max
Yeah.
for this whole topic. So
nobody can argue with that. I expect. I'm just going to scroll through all the objectives because you can look at those. And yeah, just to show all of these objectives are fitting into other plans. So the active travel plan, economic development plans. There are lots of, it's broken down into lots of implementation. There is virtually nothing in West Dorset. I haven't checked through all the other areas, but it feels frustrating. So yeah, these are the other sort of strategies that this plan also has to relate to. So it runs until the 13th of October, and the development timeline means this will be the last stage before the plan will be finalised, and then it will be adopted in 2026. So this is our last chance to feed back into the local transport plan. Okay, that's it.
What a gallop through, thank you. I mean, it's just a very busy time for everybody because we have these 2 deadlines and quite a lot of other consultations as well that we need to do. I have got, Giles, unless it's really important, I am just about to stop, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only got a couple of things to say. The first thing to say is thank you so much to all of you for coming along, for the lively discussion, and say your questions were great, your points are great, get them all into the consultation responses. If you want to continue the discussion after 8:30, or you've got specific points or queries about your local area, and I think Bob Hamblett might be that one of those people, please stay on, and Giles is happy to stay here and chat in a more
I'll stay too, if that helps.
Okay, thank you. And thanks so much to Giles and Belinda for leading us through what is a really quite complex process.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And finally, can I just remind you to please support us if you can by making a very small donation. And I've put the link in the chat. So thanks all very much. If you've got any other ideas for topics of these kind of meetings that you'd like us to run, please get in touch, because we're just here really for our community who are really care about climate, ecological emergency and taking action to stop it, to do something about it. Thanks very much.